This is Plutonic Plains, and this is Gateway 17. The mind is a labyrinth, a puzzle, and while the paths of the brain are plainly visible, its ways deceptively apparent, its destinations are unknown, its secrets still secret. And if we are to ever truly understand it, we must first learn to navigate its corridors. This is from Dr. Philip Cannell. This is from the horror film Hellraiser, Hellbound, Part 2. And it speaks of the physical makeup of the human brain. And each gateway in human design corresponds to an actual physical organ in the body. The 17 being the right eye. Now, the right eye in the male is a masculine principle, whereas in the female, I believe it's the feminine principle. And, the eye is, what is the cliche? The gateway to the soul. And in Chinese acupuncture, they talk about what is it, the Shin, the Shi, there's a word for the energy of looking at the energy of the soul through the eyes. But this particular quotation is about the West and its perception, the Western mind and its perception of the world through a scientism framework, through the religion of science, which of course is just another religion. And thus it really only looks at physical constructs and doesn't see all the layers. But in fact, science has actually gotten so advanced that it actually does. It's just not taught that way. I mean, the new age, terminology of the aura is today talked about in literature, scientific literature, as the biofield. So all has been proven true by science. I'm sorry, all the metaphysics, all the occultism has been verified by this additional layer of religion called science. And there's a mosquito I want to hit, so I don't know if the recording will pause. Okay, cool. I didn't have to hit it so hard, so hopefully that didn't annoy you guys. So, the quote talks about the human mind as a kind of something physical, and the hint of its kind of shadowlands and hinterlands. And the comparison is, the statement that's made is that the mind is a maze. Now, there's a Argentinian author called Jorge Luis Borges. Those of you who've listened to me for a while, even though I haven't read any of his stories on my channel, that's kind of strange. I need to reparate that. So Borges was really into using the maze as an archetypal image from mythology, from Daedalus, the Greek mythology, and the understanding of that as a metaphor for our dealings with archetypal reality. But there's interesting ways to observe the way we understand how to navigate, how we navigate the mind. It's really, the maze is the human body. And intelligence is something that moves through that maze. And the different organs are different arrival points in that maze. That's the larger kind of metaphor that the frame that I like to look at it through, because the mind is just one awareness center. There are other awareness centers. For those of you who have studied human design, you know that solar plexus here on the right hand side is becoming an awareness center. The gut center here is an awareness center. The splenic center is an awareness center. Now, these are all relative levels of awareness, but right now the focus has been historically with our right angle cross of planning for the last 300, 400 years and now we're moving into the right angle, which is making the solar plexus center here on the right an awareness center. Currently, we're living on the Ajna center as the awareness center. And so humans are very top heavy. You know, the West is very mentally oriented. But other cultures, not as much, or so, but more focused on intuition or something, or other aspects. And so there are many awarenesses in the human body. And intelligence is something that operates and moves through all these centers and channels. And that's what it is. That's what it is to be human. It's to have intelligence in your hands, or intelligence in your eye, or intelligence in a touch, touching something, seeing something visually, hearing something. There's intelligence that's sparked by many different gates. And intelligence is something that moves throughout the body. Now, what's fascinating to me is that, you know, this gate 17, it's called the gate of following in the original I Ching as well. And, you know, just the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. It was called following, having to do with kind of like following the plan of consciousness itself. How all of us are following some kind of plan. You know, and of course that brings up the age-old argument of free will versus fate. And as many of you have heard me say over and over again, you know, free will is an illusory concept, you know, controlled by the construct of space and time, or kind of held up by the perceptual basis of space and time that we experience every day. And there really is no difference between space and time. These are movable frames of awareness. And the modern name, the human design rave name for gate 17, which I'll alight here from Ra's Rave I Ching. I don't even see it here on the first page, but I'm assuming it's the gate of opinions. But I'll break it down in a minute. So the reason I use that quote is because we're talking about logic. We're talking about the left brain and its correspondence with the right eye. And we know to integrate consciousness, we begin with the right brain, or rather to integrate the movement of consciousness through us. Humans integrate things first through the right brain. And once those concepts are literally clear, then it can move, their awareness can move into the left brain, and then a more holistic based type of thinking. And we call this lateral thinking with the right brain. And so then every cell in the body gets infiltrated with the information. And thus, just like with human design, when you study human design, you're taking in something through the left brain initially, and then through the right brain, and then the rest of the body's cells, which is a 7-year process. And it's essentially what it is. So this is the gate of opinions. This is the gate of logic. And people with the 17 are usually a little, you know, they're a little too near their ideas, a little too identified with their ideas, at least on the shadow awareness level. But I'll break down the deeper aspects, because of course there are transcendent aspects to all these gateways. And these gateways are energy fields within us that we can access. Something else I kind of forget to remind everyone. Now, in the Rave I Ching, no, Ra keeps the name. He calls it the gate of following. Maybe it's in the book, Chaitan's Book of Lines, and maybe it's in Rudd's work, that they're more focused on utilizing the gate of opinions. So here's the gate here. You can see the sun's in 17.4. I'm doing this video maybe 3 days late. And so then the next one coming up, I think it's going to be gate 21. And gate 21 is going to be active in a couple days, and gate 21 is right here in the ego center. And the ego is still active with the 4037, and that's because we got Mercury in 37 about to leave, and in the 40 we have the South Node in Virgo. So we're still stuck kind of on our agreements, on our trusting. Can we trust someone? Shake their hand, make the deal. Trust the tribe, communality. That's the active channel occurring right now. And as you guys can see, I didn't take a picture of, I didn't get the full picture to see whether this is active, but we know it's not, this channel on the bottom, because these centers are still open. So so right now, for this period of time, these last couple of days, last week, everybody has willpower. Everyone has access to will. And so if you want to break a habit, you want to assert your will, go ahead. You have access to it. We'll check in a couple of days. I'll try to do the next video on 21 on time, and we'll see if we're still having access. Now, the south node is, sorry, it's the north node is in 37. Yeah, so the nodes are in the 4037. So actually it'll be there, it'll continue to be there for a while. The nodes are going to be in Virgo and Pisces for the whole year. So we're dealing with the transformation from Pisces energy into Aries on many levels. So new beginnings all around for the 2027. So here's what Ra had to say. We move over to the logic process and we come to the 17th gate. The first thing to recognize is that exactly opposite the 17 is the 18. They are opposite each other in the zodiac, and they are both in the same circuitry. They both belong to the logic process, and they represent a deep link to each other. There's a very important capacity that lies within the 17th gate. The nature of this gate is the future for us. What I'm teaching you in terms of wave resonance, what I teach you in terms of human design system, I often make the comment that it's not for our time. This is the time of planting a seed. It's the time of getting people to recognize that this kind of knowledge is available to anyone. The nature of this knowledge is so that humanity can be properly organized. We can be organized in a way that we can't possibly imagine now because it will be a natural process, rather than education. Beginning with belief, education can begin with true knowledge, the logical understanding of the nature of what it is to be human, one's place in the world, and where one belongs. Now Ra goes into the incarnation, global incarnation index, and that has to do with your cross angle when you were born, like what your purpose is. And he's trying to talk about the Akashic records. How weird. He tried to avoid any New Age references, but he references the mystics, and he read a lot of stuff. I mean, he read Carlos Castaneda, he read Krishnamurti, so he definitely explored metaphysics. Let's see, everybody will be able to see at some point where they fit into reality. It will be a time, he's talking about the transition. So it will be for a time when this knowledge permeates the world. It will be a time for people to be able to see exactly where they belong and exactly who belongs with them. So the thing to recognize about the nature of the Aquarian age is that it will move from the Piscean teacher, 11.4, to the Aquarian teacher, who will be symbolized by 17.4. And interestingly enough, for those of you guys who are keen on observation, perceptual observation, we are in Sun 17.4 right now. I did this chart for today, and this is the day before 28th, maybe? I don't even know. I don't have a clock with me to check. Oh, 29th says right there. Yes, this was yesterday. And so the thing to recognize about the 17th gate is it has enormous significance for us because this is the teaching of the future, which has to be deeply rooted in understanding that is of value to human rights. The relationship to the 18 or the other end If there is anything that is philosophical in my nature, it is recognition that every single individual has to be emancipated. Not simply that we emancipate races or gender, but we emancipate the individual. And we can only do that when the individual recognizes its own nature and has its place in the world. This is the ultimate truth for humanity, and this is something that will come out of this capacity to organize us. The time has come, yet, where there is the way in which this channel serves the world. One of the classic examples of this gate in our time was Osho. He was a classic 1762. This is a foreboding, a foreshadowing of what is possible in terms of the capacity to be able to organize humanity. But the reality is that organization cannot take place until understanding takes place. And the understanding of this process leads to the 60-second gate. This is the gate of the Maya. It is the gate of establishing all the names. By the time that we have written all the names of the genome, by the time that we truly understand the nature of the mechanics of the universe, when our understanding is complete in terms of what is essential to understand, to recognize intrinsically our nature, that is the moment that we can begin organizing up until that point, including the point that we are at now. This channel, like the 11, can be just as bizarre, because not all understanding serves fundamental human rights. It is a matter of fact that a great deal of collective understanding is detrimental to fundamental human rights. This is there now in the nature of the 17. I know this is a little technical. This is a collective gate, so this means it's a gate for the collective, so it's not individuated, it's not personal. And so Ra goes on to quote Milton, and he says, Paradise Lost. In Paradise Lost, the devil says, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And then he reads the hexagram for the 17, following the ancient law that those who wish to rule must first know how to serve. This is the nature of the 17 that understands that understanding must be of service. Only then will it lead to rule, will it lead to power that understanding can bring. So Ra goes on to talk about the logical process, trying to establish a pattern that we can trust and move into in the future, and how it's important that a pattern for us and for all human beings who are concerned, we see that in integration, in a possible integration at a most primary level. And so he talks about this is what fear of tomorrow brings. Being of service is the need to be able to logically understand that the pattern is secure and that tomorrow will secure it. If understanding is not of service to humanity in that way, then the understanding can be detrimental. In other words, we have been promised many times by our logical leadership that the pattern will secure us into the future, only to discover that it did exactly the opposite. So it is something to be aware of. It can also be the devil's law, not just simply God's law. Ra has a lot of fun being a dark sider sometimes. So, what does all that mean? Well, I decided to read it all because the 17 is really important in humanity's transition to the lateral mind thinking, which is occurring right now. So it's so important to be aware of how we process through the right and the left brain and to integrate them as much as possible in this time we have, in this year we have leading up to the transition to the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix. And so, just looking at my notes for 17. So, with the 17, there's a lot here in terms of awareness, but simply put, those who have gate 17, what we're looking at is, and Rod did make reference to this, is observing the moment of life as it moves forth. So living in the field of beingness. I wrote down the moment of life is to be in the field of life as it moves. And as it does so, our response is everything. Well, of course, that's for the generators. Being seen for the projectors, and initiating for the manifestors, and sampling for the reflectors. Now, do we remain silent in the presence of the field of life? Now, many of you know I'm into the work of becoming a sovereign human being, independent of the birth certificate and all these kinds of agreements that were made for us by our parents. No fault to them, just what it is. And one of the ways in which we can practice our true authentic nature is every moment of life, because every moment of life presents us with something to agree with or not, something to respond to, something to be silent about, or to argue, or to what's the word, there's another word, I guess respond to, or to negotiate with, or to, there's many options we have, and some are honor and some are dishonor according to sovereign perspectives and perceptual frames. And my favorite is Gordon Hall. For those of you guys have checked out, there's a YouTube called Sovereign. Well, it's all his accumulation of his lectures called Sovereign Freeman, and they're amazing. He was so clear in his explication of what it is to be able to encounter reality head on and agree or disagree with what's coming at you. And the power of that, the power to assert in the moment whether something is correct for you or not. As human design also underscores and nuances this, there's nothing more important. This is where you meet the world. And so with gate 17, what is the quality of life that you envisage for yourself? And that means coming into contact with how we understand life. And, as Wittgenstein said in Philosophical Investigations, we only know things through comparison. And really what we have to know things with is of it. I mean, we can only know things through our mind and or the things of our mind that we know we can only know through the mind. You can't be in the mind when you're in your heart. You can't be there. So there's no way to really understand through the mind the nature of the heart. It's an opening that occurs. And that opening causes changes in the body, biological transformations when the heart is opened. And this is the expression of the highest frequencies of the 17. This is the city and the gift. But we're going to start with the shadow. In the shadow, we're stuck in the mind. We're still there. We're still dealing with our opinions as like formal realities. We're still identified too closely with our opinions. We're still kind of living on the barren heights of cleverness, of you know, of of a height that we know something other, that we're standing above, instead of allowing also for the valleys of play and silliness, which must be integrated. We don't just live in high mountain peaks. We have valleys in life. And we're always integrating polarities. That's the job of man at this time. Each one of these gates, as I talk about a lot, they're all polarities. They're all this or that, yes or no. And so they're all frequencies that we tap into, a higher expression or lower expression. I'm feeling like this video is too long already. So what it is about the 17 is the 17 goes over things over and over and over again. And there's no vision connected here. It's not about vision, but rather it's about a kind of forensic mind, a detective mind that returns to the starting point to rake over the old, it's like a gardener of the mind, this gate. It doesn't stop until it gets what it is it's looking for. It just knows how to rewind and review things. But it can get stuck. And how not to get stuck is to, look for new insights. Get out of the rut of just the cycle, the circle, the tautology, and look for new insights, new materials to study, new patterns to observe and recognize, new turning points, cleaning the window of one's perceptual frames for a new view. And this is what it is. I mean, fear of the future, we look for patterns in life so we can make the future safe for us. I mean, what is astrology? It's a pattern, it's a cycle. It's a gift that we were given by what, the 200 watchers, which were supposed to do something nice for humanity. Instead, they came and raped and pillaged us and taught us, at least they taught us, some interesting sciences, according to the Book of Enoch, of course. And so what it is at a fundamental core level, the shadow of the 17 is about patterns and recognizing patterns, knowing life by comparison and using that to protect against the future. As the shadow is always protecting against death. And so I think that's all I wrote on the shadow. I think we can move to the gift. Oh, there's a little more that I have. So the shadow, the 17 shadow only sees what is, and the truth is really only what is. But of course, truth is something relative. And, it's, I guess the best metaphor is like Plato's cave, where the shadows on the wall are real. What's that John Lennon song where he talks about the shadows on the wall? I can't remember. But the 18, oh yeah, he says, I'm just sitting there watching the shadows on the wall. No, no, I think that's the wrong lyric. I'm thinking of a different song. I'll have to check later. So, the 17th shadow represses and compromises lateral thinking, the holistic right brain. And we're looking to balance, as I was saying. We're learning to integrate polarities. And in order for that to happen, people must realize that, what they express is just an opinion. I have a certain South Node that sometimes makes me forget that, it's just my opinion. Not some necessarily grand truth, but, on some level, in a system, it could be expressed as such. But, relative to the individual, we all have different active gates. Now, there's fears and there's, let me see how I wrote this out. So, we must look into freeing our opinions, their fears, and embrace their rage in order to move into that magical place that sees both sides of life. And only seeing both sides can a balance be struck. Control must be yielded. Now, this is something that Rudd was saying about the reactive nature of the 17. That opinions can be experienced as requiring defense to be upheld. And so it becomes a system of dogma. And, it's no secret that the male brain favors rational approaches. And so we have patriarchally constructed society that privileges the Western mind, the Western rational mind, the logical mind. But at some point, logic becomes its own tautology, its own circle, its own cycle without escape. And so those with the 17, just remember, you have some very sharp opinions. Both my mom and my aunt have one of my aunts have gate 17, and just such brilliant logic. Oh, just like culminating, just intelligent observations. Both of them would always have in my life. Did I want to hear it? I'm not a gate 17. I'm a 2343. So I know what I know, and I'm, mostly deaf. I had to learn to not be deaf. The 4323 can really only hear its own kind of channelings in. But, the 17, especially with the 17 and the 62 together, you got just the really just brilliant assessments of what is occurring in life. Very fascinating. Now, let me go into the gift because I think the video is already pretty long. So, with this particular gate, if I can find my notes, here it is. Okay. So, I guess there's one more aspect of the shadow. No, maybe that's 18. Okay, so the gift I've already been speaking about. It's just shifting out of polarity consciousness and into integrating both sides. So this would be integrating the rational mind with the lateral mind. So lateral thinking with logical thinking, paying attention to both, paying attention to intuition. We're just not paying attention to logic. What about, the day that it is? Maybe it's a Thursday. So maybe it's influenced by, today's Saturday. So it's Saturday, okay. So it's influenced by Saturn. What's the date? Oh, the date is the 29th. Okay, so it's an 11 day. It's a master number day. What does that mean? Emotions are going to be alive today. What does it mean that it's a Saturday? There's going to be things that need to get done. There's going to be rituals that need to be, serviced for Saturn, for Saturnian energy. It's not just rational thinking, which is really important too, but an integration of both sides. Also, what does it feel like today? What sign is the moon in, if we want to go there, and how does that feel in our consciousness? And here, the moon's in gate 31 yesterday, so it's still in 31. And 31 is a Leo gate. I think I got confused on one of my Hades moons. I think it's the moon's in Leo right now. And it's just squared, just squared Pluto. So anyways, I'm not doing the Hades moon video right now. So what we're talking about with gate 17 is a fixed view that holds the illusion of control over your reality. Logic always arrives at loss and defends. Like the mind, it can only ever know itself. It only knows not beyond. Oh, I actually wrote that. Okay, cool. So, I'm going to throw this aside because in order to integrate lateral and rational thinking, we're talking about the waking up of the heart, as I noted before. And so we're talking about a transcendental view. So not just a logical view. The heart must be open. And this kind of phase of awareness destroys any vestiges of the self along the way. So now I'm quoting Rudd. So it's through the eye, the right eye, which is what rules this gate, can open one through its opening, one encounters the inner sun. Once the heart has bloomed, the interface between brain and consciousness is connected. It is both true independence. The future is predetermined or created as we live. So Rudd kind of brings together it brings together the kind of polarity that we've been dealing with, that I've been expressing on the channel when I talk about fate versus free will. But, it's both. Of course, it's both. But one thing that Rudd is able to underscore really powerfully is that we do not want to hear truths that undermine what our identity is based on. So, the central gravity of our self that we construct in time and space, that's what we hold on to, identity. And really, that's what it is. I mean, as human beings, we have a hard time moving beyond our constrictions that space and time has ordained for us in a body. But we're not just in the body, we're always moving in and out of this body because we're more than that. And that awareness is such that it invades other levels of consciousness. I mean, we sleep, we dream. Many of us have active dream raves, active gates in the dream rave. We change type in the dream rave. There's very powerful layers here that express themselves being in a human body, encompassing that light that is us. And as you see here with this human design transit chart, we have activity in the 17 right now. We're looking at things rationally. And so we want to integrate a little more. We have the 31, moon in 31, leadership, influence. That's influence. And then we have 8 active, as well as the Aries vortex. 25 is active, with our new vision. And, the kind of reality check that Saturn's giving for that new vision. What's real there and what's not. The very emotional gate 22 is active. Gate disgrace or grace is the question. The 53 is active. We're going to want to begin new things during this time period as everything hits the Aries vortex and also goes through the Aries. Is it an Aries gate? I think so. Of the 53. And then I see that the 3 is active. Venus is in the 3rd line. And we have the channel of judgment being activated as well, gate 18. And that's where the Earth is opposite the 17. Sorry, it's not the channel of judgment, but the gate. And that's the one of the ancestral past. That's very powerful. And so that's what it is. I'll stop there. Hopefully this wasn't like 40 minutes. Wow. Just kept going and going. Thanks for listening, you guys. I think I'm gonna do 1 or 2 more gates, and then I'll have completed all the gates of the human design chart. I started this last year around April, and I'm going on a trip to South America in a couple weeks, or in a week or so. And so I will not be doing any more gates for the rest of the month. If I can learn how to do videos on my YouTube without showing my visage, then I may do that from time to time while I'm on my trip, so I can keep my channel kind of moving. And that could be fun. Hopefully I'll figure that out, or have the patience to figure that out is really the question. And that's about it. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate you guys. And that's it.